Welcome back to another digital art slash VFX tutorial. And the subject of this one is going to be a matte painting, something like this right here. And while this is going to be the end result of a whole bunch of different approaches, tools, and techniques, today we're just going to concentrate on one in particular that's very helpful for dealing with light, especially putting a glow on something. So what we're going to look at right here is how this bit of glow was added to this edge of this ice wall right here. Now, as many matte paintings are, this is photographic. So this is dealing with photographic sources, and that's what you see happening here. But we're going to look at one technique that's going to use some layer styles, and also relies on the fill as opposed to opacity of a layer. So if I turn this layer off, we can kind of see the end result, the beginning right there, and then we have see what we can do right here with that to add that bit of glow. So what I'll do here is, just to start off, I need a selection. So if I'm going to add some type of layer effect along here as a selection, and I'll turn this bit off here just so that it gets a little bit simpler. There we go. So we have these images kind of coming together here. But to add this effect, what we need to do is we need to start with a selection. And the selection is going to come from whatever is on this layer. So right here I've got the layers for this image. And I've got this layer group right here. And we're going to look at the right here, this one far wall. So let's close that one up, open up the far wall, and we can see these are the layers for it. And there's a combination of a number of different photos that have been kind of put together to make this final end result. So what I want to do here is I want to start with the photo here. We need to load a selection to make our shape, in this case for the glow. And so we can start with a selection, and we need to actually join a couple of different selections together. So right here I'm going to take the layer for this wall, and I'm going to command click on it to load it as a selection, or that would be control click on a PC. You can see what it is actually selected is it has selected the photo itself, and the parts we don't see right here are of course not visible because of the layer mask on it. It takes that away right there. So what I need is I need this edge right here. So if I want to take the layer mask and actually combine it with the pixels, the visible pixels on the layer, I can do a couple of things here. If I right click here, you can see how we have some mask selection options, and the one I want to do is intersect mask with selection. So if I click that one, what it's done is it's taken the mask here, and it's taken what's visible on the mask and applied that to what is only visible on that layer. And so this is the type of selection I'm looking for right here. There are other ways to do that. There's a keyboard shortcut as well that uses a few different keys, but this will suffice for right now. Now I want to come down here and I want to add the selection from this layer as well. And so this layer is has its own visibility and mask. In this case, just the mask will do. So I want to click and I want to add a selection here from the mask visibility, and that's of course what the mask looks like on that one. So that will match up perfectly. I want to add those two together. So what I usually do for something like this is to add to a selection, what you want is you want to hold down Shift, and holding down Alt or Option will delete from a selection. So if I hold down, for example, Shift, and then I command click on this mask right here, see I've now added a selection right there. So instead of replacing the selection I had, I've added a new one, or I've added to it. And so we have the two selections working together. So you need to basically do whatever you have to do to load a selection from the part that you want to add this effect to. So I've got my selection active. You can see the marching ants going along there. Everything's looking okay. So I'm going to come to where I want this new glow to be, and I will add a layer right there. And then I will also fill it with a color. Now you can see I've got some foreground, background colors right here, and I'm just going to hold down Alt backspace or Option Delete and fill with the foreground color. So there it is. Now this looks really terrible, of course, but here's the trick about using this technique. It doesn't matter at all what your foreground color is, or even what your background color. It doesn't matter at all what the color is on this layer, because we're not going to end up using the visible pixels in this end result. So let's deselect that, okay, and now we want to go in and work on this effect. The effect that I want to use here is actually going to use an inner glow and an outer glow to get the look I'm looking for. So if I double click here on the layer, that will bring up layer styles. You can also come down here and click on FX to add layer styles to it, but you can see here are our layer styles, and these are really very powerful tools to use. The trick about them is you want to make sure that you aren't using just the default settings. You want to adjust them so that they are unique to what you need. So if I want to do an inner glow and an outer glow, here's an inner glow right here, and let's make sure that's on the edge. Let's take the size up. See that glow right there? Looking pretty nice. And of course the default is white. White doesn't make a very interesting glow color, and I will of course want to use some color here from the background. So I'll come here and I can even grab a color right from the background layers here. Okay, and maybe I'll make that a bit brighter. Okay, so we see that inner glow right along there. So that's pretty cool. Inner glow is happening. You can see that it is screen, and that's fine. We can deal with that. We can adjust that later if necessary. But screen's a decent enough color for an inner glow. Now we want an outer glow. So let's turn that on, and maybe take that one back to screen if it's not already, and pick something that is a little bit lighter, a little bit less color. Let's try something like that. Maybe that's fine. Okay, and then take the size up of that outer glow. There we go. See that outer glow there? Now right there it's looking a little bit too much, too dense and heavy. So I can take that opacity down of that layer. And this of course is the wonder of working with layer styles, is that you can fine tune these. But what we want here is we want an inner glow and outer glow. So there's our inner glow right there, looking good so far. We can change that. And there is our outer glow. Okay, so here's a big part of what makes this this particular technique work. Maybe a little larger on that inner glow there. Okay, and that's going up here to our blending options. Now you'll see here we've got opacity and we have fill, and you can see the same thing right here on this layer. If I close those, you can see there's opacity and there's fill. And if you ever wondered what the difference is between those, this is the big difference right here. This is what you'll see. Now, of course, if I take the opacity down, because we don't want this awful red color, as I take that opacity down, we can take this down all the way, and that's cool. But of course, what else is going down? And that's, of course, all the layer styles are disappearing. So taking the opacity down won't work. What we want to do then is take the fill down. That's the trick right here. Take the fill down. And so I could do it right here on the layers, or if I was still back in the layer styles, double click here, and I can take the fill down, I can do it right here. So you can see opacity and fill right here are exactly the same as opacity and fill right here on the layers. It doesn't matter. But here's the real power of this. If I take the fill opacity down, but keep the opacity at 100%, the fill goes down to 0. And you can see what I have there is now we have something really cool happening. What we have is the pixels now are all 0% opacity. They aren't visible at all, but all the layer styles are visible. And that's why you have the difference between opacity and fill opacity right here. So the fill, meaning the pixels, they're 0. But anything else applied to the layer, like the layer styles and effects, are at 100%. So that's what we have right there. Now this looks pretty good, right? That's kind of the look I'm going for right along here at this edge. I've got this inner glow coming in like the light from Jupiter shining through the ice. It's kind of translucent coming there. That's really cool. And a bit of an outer glow as well to kind of add some mist there. But there's some junk down here that I don't want. And the whole thing extends the full range of the image. So remember, the pixels go all the way across, and so we can see, even though that they are opacity 0 as a fill, the layer style goes all the way across. So what I want to do is I want to actually fade this out and just keep it right here in the central area where I want it to be, and then not have it be out on the edges where it's not catching that light. It should of course, fade out like that. Now to do something like that, what I'm going to want is a layer mask on this layer. So I'm going to click down here to add a layer mask. There's my layer mask. And I will use black. There we go. Black is my foreground color. And I'm going to do some gradients. Now when I do gradients, I never do foreground to transparent. Or I never do foreground to background. There's my misspeaking here for this tutorial. The default is going to be right here, foreground to background, or black to white, usually white to black. I never do that. I always do this option right here, which is foreground to transparent, and I'll show you why. What I want to do is I want to put several black gradients on this layer mask. So with my foreground being black, just hit the D and the default key. That'll give you default colors, and then hit X to swap and make black the foreground color. Make sure I have my gradient here, and I'm going to do a linear gradient right there. So I want this to kind of be in here and fade away when it gets to about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab maybe about here, click and drag. I can even hold the shift key to have a perfectly horizontal gradient and go to about there. Okay, so something weird has happened. We can see that my my glows here, they're fading away here. So I don't have them there, that's good. They're right there, that's good. But then this strange thing is happening here that wasn't there before. What that's happening is that if I look at my layer mask, the layer styles, in this case the inner glow and the outer glow, are following here where the pixels are, and then here they're following what the mask is doing. Instead of continuing along here and fading out, it's almost like these pixels don't exist and they're turning, going down right here. And so that, of course, is what I don't want. So it's a little bit of a kind of an odd thing here, but I'll show you how to get rid of this effect happening, because in most cases you're not going to want this. Here's what you're going to want. I'm going to go back to my layer styles here. Double click on that layer, and the trick is right here in the advanced blending. And right here, I'm not sure this is really obvious or you'd even know what this is trying to tell you, but it's right here under layer mask hides effects. It's not really a good description. It's sort of Adobe speak for saying that the effects are going to ignore the mask and just fade out naturally. So I'm going to click this here, layer mask hides effects, and when I do, you'll see that's what I'm looking for. That's what I really want, is that my layer styles are right here, and they just kind of fade out along here, and they're not visible right here. So that's the option you have to check. Now 9 times out of 10, this is what you're going to want to use. So I really think this should be checked by default, but it's not. So if ever you're doing stuff with layer styles and masks and they're looking weird, this is the thing you want right there. So I'm going to click OK, click on my mask right there, and get my gradient tool. And just to show you why I'm using my foreground to transparent and not the default of foreground to background, if I did use foreground to background and I put the mask right here where I wanted to, or the gradient on the mask, if I do that, say right about there, you can see how it puts this nice black to white gradient here. But what it has done is the white has covered up everything right here. So this is why I don't like to use foreground to background on gradients. As I'm doing gradients, I'm really always going to have this option here of foreground to transparent. So if I click on that, now I can come back here and put an extra gradient right here on this side. There we go. And there's a little bit of junk hanging around here at the bottom where there are some pixels. Remember, this inner glow is going to try and follow the whole edge of pixels on this layer. And so because this layer comes down here and it has some pixels, it's putting an inner glow there. Well, if I don't want that, I'm going to get my gradient tool and start about here and just do a vertical gradient up, hold down the shift key, and maybe stop right about there. So let me show you what that mask looks like. That's what it looks like. So what's happening here is that this layer style, in this case the glows, are only going to be visible where this layer has pixels, has some opacity on this layer right along here in this white part. And it's going to fade out here to nothing, and at the bottom also fade out to nothing. So the effect is only going to appear within here. And that's what we have. So I've recreated this effect here of the glow from Jupiter hitting the ice and kind of lighting it up, maybe shining through it a little bit. And of course you can fine tune this by looking at the inner glow or outer glow, and you can adjust the opacity to make it just what you want, and even maybe try some different blending modes as well. Notice that color dodge, which is a blending mode I like a lot and works well for transparency, will not appear over very dark areas. So if you ever want to do that, you need to take it to linear dodge. That's kind of like that. So there's my linear dodge. There's the screen. You just want to kind of fine tune it and have it be right where you want. Here's that outer glow. As I see that, it's that bit of outer glow right there. Looking a little bit too heavy, so I'll take it down a little bit. But this is the type of look I'm going for. This nice glow along the edge. Now, someone told me it's not very realistic because it would assume an atmosphere, and this is the moon of Europa, so there's no atmosphere. But what I'm really looking for is something that has a nice, really cool visual, almost fantasy feel to it. And so this little bit of glow here really adds. So from an astronomical point of view, not so accurate, but from an aesthetic point of view, looks really cool. And this is the approach I'm going for. And that's really it. This is a fairly simple tutorial, and it's a fairly simple technique, but it relies on knowing a couple of things, as I'll show you once again. It relies on making sure that your fill opacity is 0 and that you set the layer mask hides effects right here. You select that so that it's checked. And that's what we're looking for. The end result is really cool. So try it out, see if it'll do what you want. I hope you enjoyed this, and stay tuned for more visual effects tutorials.